we've got Kyle, pronouns he, him, calling in from iridescent langoustines, talking about shiny lobsters. Who's a theist who wants to know why personal experience doesn't count as evidence. Kyle, you are on the line with Jesse and Forrest. How are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing good. How are you guys?
Hey, Kyle.
I'm doing really, really good, man. Doing really good. I also want to say that was you are our last theist caller that we have queued up right now. So we've got now 3 lines open for theists that want to call in. 720-619-2288. Kyle, talk to us about what you mean in here, because I can give you a long lesson that I would usually give in a science class, but I'm wondering if you have something specific that you wanted to ask.
I guess my question is, if you have personal experiences, which we all do have personal experiences, how could that not count as personal evidence? Why does it automatically make it a false?
Yeah. Jesse, you want to start? Or do you want me to?
Sure. Yeah, I'll jump in and then I'll hand the question over to you, Forrest, when I run out of cute words to say. There's a few things to address there. One, I don't think I have had any personal experiences that are inexplicable. I know that some people do or claim to, and there's no way for me to interrogate whether that's true or not.
Hey, will you explain real quick what's inexplicably mean?
Sure. Yeah. Inexplainable. So, a lot of people are saying and take any miracle narrative out there that is just not something that can normally happen within the bounds of what we understand as the physical universe, and then that's I would call a miraculous experience. I haven't had one of those, but a lot of people say that they have. I sought them fervently as a former, I don't want to say clergy because that's overstating how involved in the church that I was, but I was well on my way to becoming a full-time pastor at some point in my life.
I got you.
And I sought these experiences wholeheartedly and even did my best to believe in them, even though I lacked evidence. But even let's say that I did have one of those, that doesn't rule out I could have been mistaken. I could have been hallucinating. There are so many things that the human ability to perceive our own environment is not infallible. So even
I won't even exclude the possibility that psychedelics were part of the biblical writings.
Sure. Right. So I took a long-winded way to say that I haven't had, because one of your premises was we've all had these experiences. I have not. And two, we owe it to ourselves. I'm sorry?
I said, I'm willing to be corrected. Please correct me.
Yeah, that's what he's doing.
Yeah, it's not even about correcting. It's just I'm trying to relay my experience. And you may have had an experience that I can't quantify, but I do think that when we're dealing with these large topics of religion and philosophy, and especially when the way they impact others, there's an extra step of credulity that they need to be able to pass. And with that comes our own ability to perceive reality accurately. And sometimes that comes in examining, was I hallucinating? Was I mistaken? Was somebody pulling a fast one? Because I got to tell you, man, sleight of hand is real. Forrest, did you have anything else to say on that?
Fair enough. Now, can I ask what you got? Can I ask how you guys would dispute where they say religion is religion and Christianity is relationship, and that's why it differs from all others? I just want to hear what your guys' comeback on that one would be.
I would say that it's the exact same claim that's made by any other religious person in any other way. Is that there's the religions, but I know for sure that Krishna is real because I've personally experienced it.
Yeah, none of us can say that, right? What about I'd rather be wrong in the end than to be wrong in the end.
That's just Pascal's wager, and it's bad. So let's address what your first thing is. I'll write down Pascal's wager here at the bottom of my notes, and we'll address it. Cal's wager. We'll address it here in a second, but your initial point that we were talking about was why is personal experience not counting as evidence? Jesse touched on a couple of things, but I'll touch on a little bit more. the first thing that I would encourage everybody to do is I'm going to put a video in the chat. You can check this out. There is a famous, there we go. There's a famous like psychology test. It's called the selective attention test. And I'm going to put it here in the chat if anybody wants to watch it. It's a video of some people passing a basketball, and they're wearing different colored shirts. And you follow how many times the people in white shirts pass the basketball around. And you watch this video and you see them passing the basketball around. I'm going to leave it in the chat for just a minute and let people check it out if they want to check it out while I talk. And here in a minute, I'll come back and explain why this video is important.
Okay.
The first thing that I would say about your question, why isn't personal experience count as evidence, is because, first of all, we have personal experience, eyewitness testimony, blah, 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 of just about every religious tradition out there. So if you're going to say that personal experience counts as evidence, then you must take Christianity seriously. And you also must take Islam seriously. And you also must take Hinduism seriously. And you also must take Judaism seriously. And you also must take every whatever crazy religion from all around the world. There are people who have personal experiences with Poseidon and Zeus. And you need to take them seriously and believe that those gods are real. So that sucks. The second thing is that personal experience is evidence. Sometimes in certain cases it counts as evidence, but it's not the only evidence ever. Don't ever use it as the only evidence, because studies have demonstrated that confidence in your memory does not correlate to accuracy in your memory. Are you seeing this clump of hair right here that's just sticking like straight out? I hate it.
It's adorable.
Oh my gosh. Confidence does not correlate to accuracy. When people are very confident that they remember for sure what experience they had, that doesn't tell you anything about whether or not they actually had that experience.
Right.
In fact, it's like the lowest level of evidence, and there's a million different examples you can give of that. There's been plenty of studies where somebody watches a video on a screen of a car speeding through a thing and doing a thing, and then they ask a group of people who watch the video, okay, what color was the car? How fast were they going? How many people were standing around? All these important questions. And especially if it was a shocking video, like something crazy that happened, their accuracy goes down less and less. Like so if you're talking about personal experience with Jesus or whatever like that showing up, that's a pretty exciting, shocking thing. You're going to have low accuracy and high confidence, and it sucks. And that brings me to the video that I put in the chat a little while ago, the people passing the ball around. Like a huge proportion of people who watch that video, they can tell you exactly how many times the people in the white shirts passed the ball. They can't tell you about the man in the gorilla suit that walked through the middle of the frame, beat his chest, waved his arms, and walked off. They didn't see it, even though it happened right in the middle of the video, because they were busy counting people passing a basketball. And so like that's a really common experiment that I show to my high school students, and also I've shown to it's any good psychology class will have it. I encourage you to check it out. And the final thing is that naive realism is a thing. The very first logical fallacy that anybody should learn about. The first thing that I learned when getting my first science degree is naive realism is the idea that your senses are all you need to learn everything there is to know about the universe. At the end of the day, we are all fallible. We're all subject to being fooled. Anybody who could do the magic that Penn and Teller do today would have been considered a god 1,000 years ago, and like it would have been burned at the stake. And so, just like for that and so many other reasons, personal experience is a great thing to talk about. It is not good evidence, and it doesn't count as the only reason you should change your mind on anything, unless you're going to change your mind to literally every other religion all the time, depending on who's talking to you.
Felt you. Okay, so can I ask another question?
Yes.
All right, so you guys just concluded that, I mean, there is no creator. I mean, that's like too far of a jump. I could never take that because I consider creation as evidence.
I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to cut you off. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I want to be very clear. We're not saying there is no God. We're saying we don't have a reason to believe that there is. So it's just, I don't believe it is not the same as saying truthfully, absolutely there is not, because that would also require evidence.
Okay. Hey, I'm down with that. Now, how do you guys find meaning to life? Obviously, a lot of people find meaning to life through God or religion.
Yeah. Jesse, do you want to talk about your meaning to life?
Yeah, honestly, as a former believer, I got to tell you, God is the most shallow and meaningless meaning to life that there is. And it's so sad because a lot of us as kids are indoctrinated into thinking that God is what matters, and that our children don't matter, and our neighbors don't matter, and people suffering in other nations don't matter, because God is what matters. God is the most shallow and meaningless thing to attribute a meaning to life ever. I promise you, because at the end of the day, none of us, unless maybe Kyle has evidence for God, but if you do, you're going to be very famous and very wealthy very soon. But to this point, no one has been able to meaningfully demonstrate a God, and therefore we have things that are tangible all around us that can provide meaning and purpose, and those should be the things that we find meaning and purpose within. So, even if you don't have family, even if you don't have friends, there are people out there that could use Kyle, that Kyle could go out there and make their lives infinitely better today. And God is just such a hollow thing to attribute meaning to when it comes to the breadth of life.
Right.
Yeah. For me, it's the fact that I am very nihilistic in my philosophy, and I don't think that there's any such thing as real, true, objective meaning. I think that life as a whole, is as meaningless and as pointless as literally everything else in the universe. This entire planet could be destroyed in the most extraordinary way possible today, and it changes absolutely nothing for the Andromeda Galaxy. It just doesn't mean anything. So that gives me a really awesome position of getting to choose what matters to me and getting to explore the world around me and try to figure out what's cool and what's not. This game didn't come with the rule book, and it doesn't have any set wrong or right way to do anything. And so I get to explore, I get to dream, I get to be weird, I get to discover new things, I get to make mistakes and then try to correct those mistakes and fail at that too sometimes. And all of those things are important parts of the human experience. And so for me, my meaning, so to speak, if I think that even calling it a meaning is a bit reductive, but like my meaning, to use that word, is to try to use the little bit of time that I have in this world to make everybody else's little bit of time at least a little bit better. There's a lot of undue suffering and bullshit in the world around me, and I don't like that, because I know what it feels like to hurt. I know what it feels like to be sad. I know what it feels like to suffer, and I don't want anybody else going through those things, because people are pretty cool, and I like them, and so I want them to be happy.
For sure.
And so I try to do good things, and I try to make life better for everybody else, and it sucks and it's hard, but I think that if more people did that, things would be a little bit better. And so I try to do that, and I don't think that I'm going to be rewarded or punished in any significant way, because at the end of the day, I'm going to die, and I don't believe in an afterlife. I'm just done. So I've got I'm 32 years old. Average human lifespan in this country is around 80, maybe, if you're lucky. I have used up about a half of the time that I have, if I'm incredibly lucky and I don't die in a car wreck tomorrow. I've got a very little bit of time, and every second is precious. And so I'm going to do the best I can and try to make people smile and try to make my life and the lives of those around me as happy and as safe and as pure and beautiful as possible. That's the best I can give you for meaning. But even that, like I said, is very reductive.
Now, do you guys agree with the ethical teachings of Jesus, though?
No. Some of them,
like not
but not all of them.
But okay, fair enough. Now, you guys were both in a faith of some kind, correct?
Not really, but Jesse was.
Yeah, I was raised.
I was raised
Man,
pagan. I didn't really have a structured faith.
Okay, fair. Now, what was the killer of it? What interested you in it?
Forrest, you want me to go, or do you want to go, bud?
You have
sure.
a better answer than me.
I was, like I said, studying to become a full-time pastor, and so I was kind of just about to take that leap professionally. And I realized that I didn't have concrete evidence for anything that I was teaching people. And I was teaching people.
Right.
And at this point, like, I had to go to other clergy that I respected. I had a pastor at the time that was the head pastor of the church that I was studying under. And I was like, hey, have you heard God's voice? Because we tell people that you can hear God's voice. Have you personally? And this was like a junior pastor to a senior pastor. This was a very intimate and private conversation. Have you heard God's voice? And I trusted this guy, and he's an honest man. And to this day, I think he's a fairly honest guy. And he said no. I was like, well, I haven't either. So you and I, we are leading this church. And neither of us have encountered this being on a personal level that we are making not only a life trajectory, but a business out of. And that's where my faith started deconstructing itself. I was searching. The thing is, like, a lot of people make these claims that atheists just don't want God or haven't looked for God. I got to tell you, I became an atheist due to my search for God, my earnest search for God, using the scriptures, using contemporary philosophers. There just wasn't anything, and that's why my faith fell apart.
Yeah, and that's incredibly common. I want to point out a lot of the people that we get to call in that have deconstructed. In fact, I can even say a lot of my friends who have deconstructed, that's the story, is like, I was looking for reasons to believe in God. I was looking for good arguments for God, and I just couldn't find any. Or I was looking for reasons to disprove things like evolution or the Big Bang or the age of the Earth or whatever like that. And I ended up finding a bunch of evidence for those things, and I couldn't justify it anymore. And so, like, that happens a lot. As for me, the story is a little bit less interesting. I was raised in a very multicultural household. The majority of my family was pagan. We believed in, like, East European witchcraft. And I believed that for a long time. And I was then at a certain point, but I was also raised around, I grew up in Oklahoma, so there's double-digit churches within walking distance of every house I've ever lived in. And also we were very multicultural in that we went to every church, mosque, temple, cathedral, whatever around town. So I spent a lot of time at the Hindu temple, at the Hebrew temple, at the Buddhist temple, at the Catholic cathedral, at the mosque. I spent a lot of time at all these places talking to people and getting to know their ideas. And so I was effectively an atheist for my whole life, but I believed in, like, I was acting like an atheist. I believed in a God, but I kind of was like, for a long time, it wasn't like a guy. It was like the kind of pseudo spiritual, like, well, if I squint my eyes and turn my head, I can call this God and this and blah, blah, blah. And I definitely believed in spirits, and I definitely believed in angels and demons and all this stuff. And then at a certain point, I just applied the same rules of logic and morality that I do to literally everything else in my life to that, and it fell apart. As soon as I started asking for real evidence for what I believed in, and as soon as I started taking it seriously about, like, whether or not what I believed was true, or if it just made me feel good, all of a sudden I realized there was no good reason to believe in any of this stuff. And in fact, it was actually hindering my education in a lot of other ways to think of those things. And so it fell apart. And that's another thing you mentioned a little while earlier, Pascal's wager. I didn't get to talk about it a minute ago. Do you want to touch it now, or do you have a different question you want to go to?
You can go ahead and address it.
Just so very quickly, the reason why just saying I'd rather be wrong about God than to say I'd rather believe in God and be wrong than say I'd rather not believe in God and be wrong, because then I go to hell and all those things. It's the same thing that we talked about at the beginning when we talked about evidence. You would need to be afraid of literally every single hell on offer. Christianity alone has like 3,000 denominations. So you've got, you pick one, and then 2,999 other times you're going to be in hell anyway. So just like by sheer probability. So yeah, Pascal's wager sucks for a lot of reasons, not the least of which being that you'd have to convert to every religion simultaneously in order for it to actually be effective. Or you think that you can pull one over on God. You think that you can trick God into letting you into heaven by way of a logical, loophole. And that sounds kind of arrogant and shitty too.
Yeah. So this, religious would, okay. Now, you guys don't believe in, like, a spiritual realm?
Nope.
Okay. So, like,
same reason. We don't have any evidence for it.
I hear you. Now, what on an atheistic point of view, what would be like a voice in someone's head telling them to commit suicide? What is that to you guys?
Psychosis. That's something that we actually do have evidence for. Is there's a lot of different things, either schizophrenia or a momentary mental break. There's a lot of different conditions. I'm not a psychologist, I'm a biologist, but I know of a lot of different conditions that can cause something like that to happen. Right. And the same people who would call that like a demon or something like that today are the same kind of people that also called epilepsy demonic possession a little while ago. And we learned actually that's not what that is. It's actually a pathology going on here that we can treat. And so if someone has depression, what they need is treatment, not religion.
Now, if we are to hit a whatever you want to call it, a creator, God, would you say that if God is outside of time, space, and matter, it wouldn't logically make sense with our brains to begin with?
No. The statement, if that thing exists in the first place, doesn't make any sense in my head. If something exists in a place outside of space, that place would also be space. And if they're doing things, that requires time. And if they're made of stuff, that's almost certainly matter, but not necessarily matter. So like just right. you're answering, you're trying to answer a question by asking several more incredibly more complicated questions. And that doesn't make any sense to me. Yeah. Basically the whole thing, man, it sounds like from the questions you're asking here, it sounds like this is your first time engaging with atheism in a real way. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yeah, because these are and this is no shade to you. I really appreciate you calling, and I really appreciate the questions you've asked. A lot of these questions are really common for people who have just never even thought, like, what does an atheist actually do? You know what I mean? And so I really appreciate you bringing these up.
Like people in Satanism, people want to automatically say you worship Satan. No, essentially you worship yourself. But that's besides the
Precisely.
point. Now,
yeah, so there's a lot there, and so I really appreciate you bringing these things up, and I want you to understand the whole premise here when it comes to any supernatural thing, be it God, ghosts, spirits, magic, you name it. It's just the fact that we don't have any reason to believe that. We don't have any serious evidence for that. These are positive claims that require a reason to believe in them. And Jesse and I can also tell you, this may add a layer of contrivancy to this whole thing that maybe you don't want to deal with right now. I don't know. But like, I can say for myself, and I'm pretty sure Jesse would also say, that even if you could prove this God was real, we have an issue with it, especially if it's like the Christian or the Muslim God. Like I've yet to hear a God that's been offered to me that I haven't really seriously disliked as a person, as well as saying I don't believe the thing exists. So like, there's a lot to it that's beyond just sitting here saying, nuh-uh, you know what I mean? I just don't want you to think that we're just sitting here being contrarian just for the sake of doing it.
And I mean, man, I want to say that, just do you actually believe in that thing, or do you believe in it because you simply just want something to believe in? I mean, that's crossed my mind.
You're talking about God?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would just believe in it to have something to believe in, because we as a culture here in America tend to value faith as some sort of a virtue. And so it's kind of just a cultural thing that people just accept that there's a God there. And if you don't, you're weird. And a lot of questions like the ones you're asking, I don't think that these should be difficult questions for a lot of people but like to say, okay, well, where did the universe come from or something? It's just, I don't know. And you can just leave it there, and that's fine until we learn something, the same way you would with anything else. It's for some reason, in this case, we tend to invent magical, explanations for things when we really don't need to.
Right. Now, do you guys hold the same definition for faith as Aaron Raw, that it's believing in bullshit till you actually believe it?
That's pretty harsh, but
man, he's harsh, man.
he is. I know him. He's a guy. I've known him personally, and he is. And honestly, if you get me on a fiery rant, I'll be just as harsh. I would say a nicer way for me that I would say it is just faith is believing in something in spite of not having evidence for it. Faith is believing in something when you don't have evidence, because if you had evidence, you wouldn't have faith. So you want to believe something, so you just do, despite the fact that there's no evidence for that thing. And that's an issue for me.
The same definition used in biblical definition is your definition.
Sorry?
Now, do you guys believe in any of the Bible, like as factual, historic evidence or any of that?
Some of it, there's things that are indisputable, but like a lot of it is easily disputable. So it's
So like,
it's not that. Go ahead, Forrest.
Oh no, I'm sorry. Yeah, I've been talking for a long time. You go.
We like your voice. We like your words, buddy. So there are accurate historical accounts in the Bible. There are some claims that are, if not absolutely dismissible, certainly difficult to prove. So does that answer your question? Like, some of the ethical practices in the Bible I think are great. Some of them I think should be dismissed with vitriol. Like how to treat your slaves, because honestly, I don't think you should have slaves. How to stone your children if they backsass you. I don't think you should kill your kids with rocks. I think it's a bad idea. I'll go out on a limb and say that.
Hey, would you agree that we are a slave to something in this life, whether it be our job, this, that, or the other, though?
No, I think that's a funny way to say that, like, shit happens, but like the reality of it is a gross oversimplification of what a slave actually is, and it kind of glosses over the real horror of slavery. And so, like, for me, I think the Bible has some true stuff insofar as, like, there was probably a guy named Jesus at one point. That was probably a thing. I don't know if his name was actually Jesus, but like a historical figure who maybe existed at that time and said some stuff. Maybe. I don't think he was unique, and I don't think he was magical, and I don't think that there's any of that. It's like saying, like, are the Spider-Man comics good evidence for anything? Because they have New York City in them, and we know New York City is real. Like, yeah, that part's real. A lot of the places in the Bible are real. Some of the people in the Bible were real. Did they say and do the things that the Bible says? Probably not. Was there actually magical talking snakes and donkeys and a giant flood that covered the earth? Absolutely not. And so for that reason, it's a work of historical fiction at this point, is what I would call it.
Now on the resurrection,
it's like Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. You know what I mean? Very real, serious situation with shit that did not actually happen with people who were real, you know?
So are you guys more in line with the stoned ape theory?
No,
but it's a fun one.
Okay.
I think it's fun, but I don't think it's real.
It's interesting, yeah. Yeah, my first master's was in bioanthro. I studied human evolution for my first master's, and like, no, there's no serious. It's not a thing. But like, evolution is, just not that way.
Right. Now, let's move on to the resurrection. Like, you guys say that there is no evidence for that, but could that be later found false? Like, could it have actually happened in your guys' mind?
Absolutely. So, yeah, neither Jesse nor I think anybody else on this particular network would ever say that there's nothing that could possibly change our mind. There could be evidence. Yeah, there could be evidence for this stuff. And then I would know, if you proved to me that Jesus actually was a dude who did and said the things that he said, and was who he said he was, and actually rose from the dead and is actually like king over everybody and all these things, like, I would be the first one to sit here and say, okay, I am no longer an atheist. I am now a theist. However, am still.
Hey, that's fair, man.
But I would also continue saying that I don't like Jesus, and I don't worship him, and I don't follow him, and I don't want anything to do with him. So I would still say that I don't like this guy, but I would admit that he exists. The problem is there's no reason to believe that any of that stuff's real. Even if you look to the Bible, the four Gospels each have a different story of how the resurrection supposedly happened. In one of them, they went there and the tomb was already open. In another one, they went there and the tomb wasn't open, and then an angel came and opened it. In another one, there was an earthquake that opened it. In one of them, there was an angel inside. In another one, there were two angels sitting on the rock. In another one, the angels weren't there until the people got there, and then they appeared. In one of them, the people saw it for themselves. And another one, the women saw it and then brought back the story and told everybody, and then they went to confirm it later. There's in one of them, the body was inside and then ascended to heaven in front of them. And another one, the body was never there in the first place. So if you want to talk about evidence, having four different accounts of the same event is bad evidence.
Hey, that is the funniest thing to me. I love the fact that atheists do more Bible study than Christians do Bible study. It's crazy to me.
It's the best way to become an atheist, is to read the Bible and see that it doesn't make any damn sense. And when it does make sense, it's usually horrible. Like, a lot of the Bible is evil. And then when it does say something that's even benign, it's fucking nonsense. It doesn't make any damn sense. There's a part in there with a goddamn talking donkey. And Like, unless you think Shrek might have been a documentary, it's an issue, you know? And so, like, just if you read the Bible seriously, it's a comedy of this character of God making mistake after mistake after mistake, and then punishing innocent people for his mistakes. It's an awful story. And unless you're really into like the Saw movies and other similar torture porn, it's not a good story.
Okay, now let's go from New Testament to Revelation.
Oh yeah,
that's not an evil story.
Absolutely, it is.
Well, when you get to Revelation, when dude's about to come judge the world, like,
yeah, dude's
about
to come judge the world. Dude's about to come judge the world. You're absolutely right. Why is he judging us again?
Well, we wouldn't be judged if we were. Well, I don't want to use biblical lingo with you guys.
You can use it. I'm familiar with it. Go for it. Why is God judging us in Revelations?
Let me hear your take on it.
No, I'm asking you. You believe in the stuff. So Revelations, it's the end of the world. It's the apocalypse. God is going to judge the world and bring about his eternal kingdom. How does he go about doing that?
Well, I don't take Revelation literally because it was a vision, and I don't think that's how it's like. I'm still learning, so I can't give my input. I think it's a fascinating book to read. It's like Harry Potter type shit, but
yeah. So he sends a bunch of terrible destruction all over the earth. There's earthquakes and hurricanes and tornadoes and all this shit, and lots of people die. Yeah. He sends plague, famine, pestilence, all the natural disasters, wipes out most of humanity in horrifying ways. So right away, not a fan. I'm not a big on genocide. I think it's a bad thing to do. And here's God doing it. That would actually be the third time be the second time he did it himself. No, pardon me, it is the third. It's the third time in the Bible that God committed genocides himself. It's not even close to the third time that he orders it. He orders it several times. But so I know God's super pro genocide in the Bible, but Revelations is one where he does it to like the whole damn world again after saying that he wouldn't do it. Sorry?
What's genocide?
In this case, it's just killing lots and lots and lots and lots of people all at once. That's a very loose usage of the word genocide. The actual definition of the word genocide is a little more specific. It deals with the intent to destroy a population, either in whole or in part, by killing them, creating conditions of life that cause their destruction, taking children away from them, preventing births within that population. Like it's actually fairly specific. In this case, I'm just talking about murdering most of humanity. So killing the whole population of the planet in part is what I would say. That's genocide. That's what he's doing.
Right.
So in this case, that's what Revelations is. The same way that's what the flood was, and the same way that's what he did to Egypt as well, by killing all the firstborns and all that whole shit. That was evil. That was just killing a lot of innocent people for no reason.
Thank God it didn't happen.
Yeah, thank goodness it's not real. And then in Revelations, he has 1,000-year war with Satan. He has 1,000-year war with Satan, isn't it? I think that's how long it is. Which, unless Satan is actually an adversary for this guy, is ridiculous. If God's as powerful as Christians say that he is, there's no need for any of that to happen. He could snap his fingers and that would be too much effort to have it be, over with. But I guess that's what's necessary. Then he has this whole situation where people can choose to follow the devil and go to hell and all this stuff. Why? Why do that? Why not just forgive people of their sins and be kind and say, hey, I love you, and so I'm not going to allow you to. Why the fuck did he make hell in the first place? And then that brings us back to the first thing, which is that the first question I asked you is, why is he judging us? He's judging us because he made a group of unrealistic, completely ridiculous rules, and then made us sick We were born sinful, unable to fulfill the rules, and then we're punished for not fulfilling the rules. And now he's going to judge us for the stupid system that he set up that he easily could have changed at any time, but didn't because he's an asshole. So like the whole story of Revelation is just the final chapter of an entire book of God swinging his dick around just to prove how big and powerful he is and making his ego everybody else's problem. And and Revelation is like the pickle on top of that shit sandwich. It's the biggest way he could possibly do that. It just sucks.
Man. Well, yeah, Revelation sucks. You're right.
God sucks. Like, that's the thing, man. God is a big dick. Like the whole thing, like take the we mentioned a minute ago with the Pharaoh with pulling the Jews out of Egypt and all that thing. Have you read Exodus? Have you read that story?
I've listened a couple times now.
Okay. Read it. Go just check it out. It's not a long part of the book. Right. And the whole thing is, he does all the plagues, right? He sends the frogs, and water to blood and all this stuff. Do you know why he did that? It's because the Pharaoh refused to let the slaves go, which that never happened in the first place. But that's not the point. Like, the Pharaoh refused to let the slaves go, so God sends another plague. And then the next line says the Pharaoh was convinced he wanted to let the slaves go, and so God hardened his heart so that he would not let the slaves go, and then he sends another plague. God interferes with the Pharaoh's free will so that he can continue showing off by torturing the innocent people of Egypt who have no control over the government and can't let the slaves go. And I think there are also several times where the people in Egypt are demanding the Pharaoh end slavery because God keeps punishing them. And then God comes and forces the Pharaoh to do something evil by keeping slaves so that he can continue punishing and killing people. And it all culminates with him killing every firstborn child in Egypt. It's all so that he can kill a bunch of babies. That's the end goal for God, is to murder thousands of babies who don't own slaves. Did the babies own the fucking slaves? No, they're babies. And he kills all these babies so that finally he can then allow the Pharaoh to be convinced so that he can then lead Moses into the desert, lose him for a long time. The whole book of Judges is him putting the Jews back into slavery over and over and over. Intentionally, he puts them back as slaves because they disobey him in some way. And then they say, oh, I'm sorry, we'll be good now. And so he liberates them from slavery by murdering a bunch more people. And then they're bad. And so he makes them slaves again so he can murder more people. And then finally, they come to the promised land, and God tells Moses, hey, you've been leading them this whole time. You've been a good and faithful servant. You've done all these things for me. But if I feel like you shouldn't go in there, though, you've kind of just been a dick anyway, so fuck you. And Moses dies on the hill before he ever gets into the promised land that he's been fighting for eons to get to. What an asshole! This God is not a good person. He's a terrible, stupid person who makes terrible decisions and then punishes everybody else for his bad decisions. And the Bible is an awful, awful book full of immoral, terrible people. Oh, and by the way, speaking of fucking Moses, the burning bush, read that too, because Moses talks to God in the burning bush, and God's like, go tell people that you're my servant and that I'm going to free the Israelites. And so Moses goes to do that, and literally the next line is that God attacks Moses and tries to kill him, and the only thing that stops him is that I think it's his wife comes out and quickly gives him a circumcision and throws his foreskin on his feet. Literally, God's like, go, my child, go do my will. Fuck you! And he just like attacks him and starts killing. And the only thing that stops him is somebody cuts his dick. And he's like, oh, well, shit, now he's got his dick cut. I guess I'm not going to kill him anymore. What is this God? It's a madhouse, dude. Read the book. It's horrible. If you want to be an atheist, reading the Bible is a great way to get there.
Yep. Sorry,
I've been yelling for a minute. It's a terrible book.
Oh, you good, man?
Oh my gosh.
I guess just I don't know. I don't overlook it because I am still on a spiritual journey, I guess you could say. I guess I've tried to disprove it, man. So I looked into the Quran, and then I read the Satanic Bible, the Book of Mormon. Started that, was terrible. but it's like Jesus is mentioned in every religion. Why?
Not
What's
everyone,
so special about that
just-
guy, man?
Just those ones, because the Book of Mormon and the Quran are derivatives of Christianity.
Got you.
Yeah, so there is the Torah, and then from the Torah we got the Bible, and then from the Bible we got the Quran, the Book of Mormon, the whatever the hell the Jehovah's Witnesses use, and all those other ones. Those are all derivatives of that. So the big major religions are what we call Abrahamic, and yeah, they're all derivative of the same general story from around 2,000 years ago in Palestine. Some shit happened, and that's the story. There's plenty of other religions on offer that don't mention Jesus, and they all have exactly as much evidence going for them.
Now, hey, now I've heard Aaron Ross say this on the ethical teachings of Jesus predated Jesus back to Krishna, and then he said Krishna did everything Jesus did much better than Jesus did it. Can you kind of touch on that if you're familiar?
Can we touch on that tomorrow, Kyle, when you call back on Step Talk?
That'll work, man.
Yeah,
hey, guys, yeah, man, I appreciate your guys' time.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate you and your questions. They've been a lot of fun. Please do call us tomorrow and talk to Jesse and I some more, okay?
For sure, man. Hey, take care.
Thanks, buddy.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Hey, come on, man. We gotta promote that clip we all just watched.
Well, I'd rather not shill.
Okay, well, Daddy has a $2,000 a month Red Oak habit, and I am your production god, and you will shill when I tell you to shill. Dance for me, baby.
Go, God damn it. Why did my life come to this? Go to patreon.com/call-the-line and donate. God damn it.
This is what happens when we let live chatters write our scripts.